Hello, everyone. Good morning in Europe. Good afternoon in Southeast Asia. Good morning, very early in the morning in Latin America, where we have also a special invitee. It's a pleasure to invite you to follow this conversation, this seminar on European Union, ASEAN opportunities for Indonesia and Spain. My name is Vicente Palacio, and I'm Foreign Policy Director of Fundación Alternativas, the top independent progressive think tank in Spain. This is supposed to be a start, the kickoff of a series of conversations, dialogues, working papers, seminars along 2025 devoted to this hot issue, which is the opportunities, the challenges for the European Union on the one hand, and for the Association of Southeast Nations, the partnership with Europeans. This is very important for Spain and Indonesia, as we are regional powers, and we are also common challenges and opportunities in many fields, like the digital and green transitions, in the trade, as we have today a protectionist wave in the world, and also in security field, not only the cyber, but also defense, security in general, energy security, and many others. Today, we have with us distinguished fellows and colleagues, which will have a very interesting conversation. You are invited to join us and ask the questions you may have. The European Union, again, is the second largest foreign investor in Asia. Is also the third largest trading partner. And Spain, again, and Indonesia are very important countries. So I hope that this is the beginning of a special relationship between us and cooperation. Let me start then by introducing to Dayu Nirma. She's in Jakarta right now. Good morning, good afternoon, Dayu.
Good morning and good afternoon.
You are a senior fellow of a huge foreign policy network in Indonesia and ASEAN, which is called the Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, FPCI, the largest and maybe the most important think tank network in this region. So the floor is yours, and we are eager to listen to what you have to say. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon. For those of you joining from different parts of the world, I hope I can do this in less than 10 minutes. Anyways, ASEAN and EU and Indonesia and Spain, those are like very huge topics. This is a very exciting time. I should say I'm a huge optimist, as you can tell. Well, let us first start with ASEAN. ASEAN is the sixth largest economy, and it's growing in size. So if you talk about the region, currently the growth drivers are the Philippines and Vietnam, but Indonesia remains a very strong contender. What does it mean? When the region is growing, there will be growing demand for energy, there will be growing demand for goods and services. The economy is growing more modern. So when we talk about services, it's not just traditional services, but also financial services, digital services, and others. And the second part about ASEAN and ASEAN member states is the changing demography. So not only that, some countries such as Thailand, Singapore, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia after 2030, and Philippines as well after 2030, we're growing as an aging demography, which means that One, we're not actually that prepared in terms of services, in terms of support to this changing demography, in terms of providing jobs for those that need to stay in the workforce longer. And we see that European counterparts have longer experience in this. The second part of our demography is we are increasingly urban. And it is interesting because now more than 50% of the population in ASEAN and ASEAN member states live in cities, which means that with challenges with regards to climate change, we will need resilient cities. We will also need, for example, disaster mitigation, infrastructure, and those are interesting if we talk about potential cooperation. And I mentioned climate change. ASEAN member states are, some of the countries are most vulnerable to climate change. We talk about Myanmar, Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia. We are highly susceptible to extreme weather changes. And if one side we're increasingly urban, but on the other side, the economy is still very much reliant or dependent on natural resources, on agriculture, on extractive industries. So one, we're highly susceptible to climate change. And two, there is an intention, deliberate intention for these countries to move towards more climate resilient economies and the makeup of those economy. So you see, for example, Indonesia, you have just transition, energy transition, moving away from coal, even though that's probably challenged with the changing administration. There's also interest in electrifying the public transportation. So we're talking about Jakarta, massive infrastructure, changing of the buses. We talk about Bali and the need for connectivity. So those are interesting changes that is happening in ASEAN. So what does it mean, when we talk about ASEAN and EU cooperation? So EU, of course, is a strategic partner. We have had an action plan, and it talks about digitalization and digital innovation. It talks about connectivity. It talks about infrastructure. Even talks about defense and political cooperation. What is probably demanded also in the future is support to small and medium enterprises, but because whether we like it or not, in some of this middle income economies such as Indonesia, Vietnam, and Philippines, there's a phenomenon that we call as the missing middle. So we have like the big mega companies, and we have like very small micro and small medium enterprises. And for them to graduate to even to medium size, to really contribute and to generate perhaps demand from EU and from Spain, there needs some support. So in practice, if we talk about Indonesia, it's about supporting the smallholders to qualify for or to be able to access the European markets after the EUDR. So we talk about palm oil, we talk about also after CBAM, we talk about cocoa, we talk about coffee and all that, right? We also talk about EU as a partner that also is willing to engage in non-traditional, security issues. So not only about climate change, but also cybersecurity and human rights. We don't have that many partners talking about human rights. When we talk about ASEAN, when we talk about Myanmar, human rights is front and center. So in that sense, it is important. And we talk about externally beyond ASEAN, beyond EU, also with the election of President Donald Trump. The region, ASEAN, is navigating between these two giants that have equally strong presence in the region, both the US and China. And when we had like a regional meeting, we're actually not favoring one over the other. So it's very pragmatic. The approach is very pragmatic. Whoever gives us the largest and more practical advantage, benefits to the population, those will be the ones that are seen as strategic partner. And with the election of President Donald Trump and the US pulling out of Paris Agreement, also ASEAN and ASEAN member states are looking to EU in terms of, taking over the leadership in this very important agenda. And ASEAN and Indonesia as well is going to also look at, not weakening multilateralism, but also the changing makeup of multilateralism. It's going to stay whether you elect it or not. It's probably going to change. And you will see that there will be like minilaterals, so Indonesia with other middle powers or Indonesia with other large countries will have to pick very strategic and very thematic alliances depending on what they see fit. So what does that mean for relations between Indonesia and Spain? Beginning with Indonesia, President Prabowo is very different from President Jokowi in the sense that he is more confident, he is more assertive, he wants Indonesia to play a more stronger role at the global level. And Indonesia also does not want to be seen as choosing, the US over China, or the West over China, as demonstrated by Indonesia trying to ascend to OECD. At the same time, Indonesia just declared that it wants to be a member of BRICS. So very pragmatic, wanting to navigate the landscape, but at the same time also growing very confident at the global stage. So Indonesia is going to be very vocal, I believe, in terms of foreign policy, in terms of economic and trade cooperation. I think food security, energy security is very important for Indonesia. President Prabowo, being the former Minister of Defense and having military background, defense cooperation is perhaps something that both Indonesia and Spain can explore. I think the president is highly interested in that. If we talk about the omnibus law or the reform of various laws related to investment, defense industry is no longer an industry that is exclusively for domestic investors. So that's going to be exciting. The health sector is also going to be exciting. Digitalization, innovation is something that is also important to the president's agenda. Even in my sector, the natural resources sector, we went to the Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Forestry, and all of them says that we are pushed towards greater digitalization, greater transparency. So digital governance is going to be very important, having one map, having one data. And that will also impact, I think, investors from Spain, if they look into doing business in Indonesia. Hopefully it will be easier, it will be more streamlined, it will be more transparent. And I think just to close in the final minute is never undermine the importance of people-to-people connectivity. So if this is beyond scholarship, this is beyond the webinar that we have right now, but also cultural exchanges, fostering dialogue between youth, because whether we like it or not, they're actually important. They're playing very important role in the diplomatic relations between the two countries. So it's beyond trade, it's beyond economic partnership, but fostering mutual understanding, fostering trust, because trust is something that is very important to Indonesian officials. One of the reasons they said to the Japanese government explaining why now China and Korea is on the rise and Japanese trade relations on the decline, because they said that the Japanese government and businesses have been too arrogant. They've been too condescending, and that's why we need to build a better trust, and that has to be mutual. So let me end there, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak. Thank you so much. Good morning and good afternoon.
So thank you very much, Dawu, for your insightful ideas and comments. It's been very, very useful for us to listen to you, what you had to say. And this is a start, and you cover a wide spectrum of topics, the geopolitical ones, which are in focus. We are pretty much concerned with this, the role that we can, as Europeans, can play in this competition between China and the United States in the region. So we look forward to have a very fruitful relationship with you and go deeper into this. And also the opportunities, as you mentioned, for Spain and Indonesia, as, for our governments. And there is still a long way to get there, get to the fruitful and full cooperation. But we will try to contribute to this. Now we have with us, if I may, to introduce to Emilio de Miguel. Emilio is a good friend. Emilio is an extraordinary diplomat with a vast experience in the region. I guess, Emilio, that you will react to the words of Dayu in a very positive manner, because they were extraordinary words for us. And Emilio de Miguel is currently the director of Casa Asia Center in Madrid, a very important institution. And again, you have traveled around the region. You have positions. You hold positions in the region as a diplomat in the embassies of Spain. A lot of meetings, a lot of people you met there. So we are looking forward to listen what you have to say. Thank you, Emilio, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you also for the words of Dayu. I think that I agree with her in many respects. To start, I must start speaking about Trump. This is the elephant in the room, and I think the sooner we speak about him, the best. What can we expect in the Indo-Pacific with Trump presidency? I expect an increased and deepened rivalry with China. The problem for us, for ASEAN, for Europe, for Spain, it's not to be dragged into this rivalry. I think that neither of us wants to take sides. In the past, during Biden presidency, which was more consensual, we used to say that US is a like-minded country, but we should never forget that our interests are not necessarily the same. So I think that in that respect, about the need to have a strategic autonomy, both EU and ASEAN, this is something we have in common. I will say what we have also in common in the Indo-Pacific. To start, both of us, ASEAN and European Union, we are very similar associations. The European Union has gone further in the integration way, but I think even if ASEAN doesn't want to speak very much about integration, I think this is the way for the future for ASEAN. For us, for the European Union, the Indo-Pacific is very important. Over 40% of our trade passes through the Indo-Pacific. Also, in the Indo-Pacific, it's where we are looking for partners for some of the principles we defend, such as the defense of UNCLOS, such as the resilience against climate change, green transition. For that to succeed globally, we need partners in the Indo-Pacific. And for this, I think the ASEAN is a very good partner. Besides that, as I mentioned, we don't want to be dragged to any kind of rivalry. And being ASEAN and European countries and the EU composed by middle powers, the best for middle powers, in order to defend ourselves, we have two things. First is cohesion and union, and the second is respect of international law. For middle powers, international law is the best defense. So it's up to us to defend an order where international law is respected. Going to the ASEAN outlook for the Indo-Pacific, when it was issued by ASEAN, and there Indonesia had a big role in the issuing of this perspective, of this outlook, immediately I saw that of all the strategies on the Indo-Pacific that I have seen and I have studied, this is the one that it's closer to the EU strategy on the Indo-Pacific. Some areas I saw we could work together is first, cooperation, maritime cooperation. Maritime cooperation along the years has become a more comprehensive term. Now, when we speak about maritime cooperation, we are speaking about sustainable management of resources, about combating human trafficking, criminality, cross-border criminality. We are talking about controlling the maritime ways through which the trade passes, also about the respect of UNCLOS. I think that European Union and ASEAN have a strong interest in cooperating more in maritime issues. The second area where we can work together is connectivity. ASEAN was the first association that spoke about connectivity with their master plan of 2010. Since then, the concept of connectivity for ASEAN has broadened, as I think it has broadened for all of us. Now, connectivity is not only about building infrastructures. This is also, but also about digitalization, about harmonization of regulations, about contacts people to people that you mentioned, and it's something that in these debates we tend to forget, because at the end of the day, connections people to people are extremely important. Well, as I was saying, connectivity is another field. European Union has launched the Global Gateway. The Global Gateway has already some projects in Southeast Asia, and not only in Southeast Asia, in the whole of Asia. Global Gateway wants to be an alternative. We are promoting a model of connectivity which is sustainable environmentally, financially, and socially. A third point we have in common, the outlook of ASEAN speaks about the accomplishment, the achievement of the goals of the 2030 agenda. This thing, it's not written in the EU strategy. Nevertheless, the EU is really working hard, and we look for partnerships for the achievement of these objectives. Finally, there is economy. When the EU strategy was drafted, the world was already passing through a period of deglobalization and especially of protectionism. I'm afraid that now with Trump mandate, this protectionism will be even more noticeable. European Union has tried, we are for open trade, for open relations. So one of the things we have been defending in the Indo-Pacific, it's been the signature of FTAs. Presently, we are negotiating one with India. That India, by the way, is the only country of the ASEAN Plus 6 which is not part of the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. We are in talks with Thailand, with Indonesia, with Philippines and Malaysia about FTAs. The effort it's the EU is giving to this question is shown by the fact that we are in talks with 4 different ASEAN countries. I think we have in ASEAN already FTA with Vietnam and Singapore. And it would be a success if in the coming years we manage to sign FTAs with these 4 countries. Finally, in the originally in the outlook, the issues of security and defense were not in the outlook. During the Indonesian presidency in 2023, security was introduced into the perspective. What I think it's the right step. We are passing in a very geopolitical difficulties, and we cannot forget about security. I have already been speaking about almost 10 minutes, so I would let it here simply with the idea that security is important, and I hope we speak today also about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emilio. This has been food for thought for our next conversation. Emilio de Miguel, Director of Casa Asia Center in Madrid, thank you very much. And so now we move on to the dialogue, to the next conversation, which will be moderated by Elisa Zaleska. She's a master in geopolitics and strategic studies. Elisa, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vicente. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you again, Vicente, Dayo, and Emilio for your speeches and great introduction to the topic of our webinar. Now we are moving to discussion focused on the issues of trade, technology, and actually security, to answer Emilio, and the opportunities for further integration between the regions, as well as Indonesia and Spain. And here the knowledge is going to be shared by the experts in ASEAN region and collaboration with European Union. My name is Elisa Zaleska. I'm a current Master in Geopolitics and Strategic Studies student. I'm collaborating with Fundación Alternativas in this project, and I'm moderating this discussion. So firstly, I would like to welcome all listeners who are with us via YouTube, where chat is open for you. So you can ask the question for our speakers, which they will answer at the end of the discussion. So now, well, let me introduce our first speaker, who is Maria Bernarda Borda-Romero, who is an economist, a statistical analyst at Argentinian Embassy to the EU. She's also a specialist in data analysis and international trade, and has experience as a research assistant at Trade and Investment Division of United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, which she actually gained in Thailand. Hello, Maria. Thank you for being here. And to begin, in order to guide the audience into the subject, could you provide a brief overview of the current state of trade and economic cooperation between the EU and ASEAN? And would you distinguish some key trends and areas of focus that define partnership?
Sorry, I activated my audio. Yes, in the present, as was already said by Emilio, we have 2 FTAs signed with Vietnam and Singapore. The integration between the EU and ASEAN is happening at bilateral level. That has been the position adopted formally in order to later on integrate block to block through regional agreements. Some of the goods that we are trading are related mostly to manufacturers, advanced manufacturers that provide services for automation, also related to cars, and they provide us with semiconductors. This is in goods. There is a lot of trade happening in services, and this is related to digital trade. The digital trade, I think it's an area that is gaining currently a lot of attention. In economics, with trade indicators, a lot of databases are being developed currently, and they are measuring this. And this, I think, it's an area of focus for the future to reap the benefits of trade. Digital trade incorporates diverse goods and services, and they are all integrated into the production and the way that products are marketed. I think that's the frontier in the way that we produce and trade goods.
Thank you so much, Maria. Another thing, you are a specialist in data analysis. You also had to deal with this issue during your stay in Thailand. So could you describe the importance of data analysis in international trade strategies, especially to support economic growth and development across the EU and ASEAN?
Data analysis and the possibility, the handling of data and the production of data is imperative. I can't explain how important it is. I think that one of the things that reflect the importance of this is how service currently is being registered. What do I want to say? Like what is the message I want to convey? Let me give you a clear example. 10 years ago, when I was in Bangkok working as a research assistant, we barely had service trade data. That's a fact. I had to work with that. At that time, we had some studies that allowed you to let's say, focalize studies, which means these are not databases, that allowed us to get some data related to mode 1. That's the simplest way, the simplest mode of service data. To make it simple, in simple terms, it's the most basic way to measure one type of services. Nowadays, there are databases developed, and proxies used. Proxies are a way to, when we don't have data, we approximate, we estimate. So nowadays we have all this type of databases that have been developed in a decade. And we are moving forward. What am I trying to say with this? How are we moving forward? We are using in the future, and we are using it currently, and we're going to incorporate more. We're using administrative data. Administrative data is data that is recorded for fiscalization, so regulation purposes. So it's not recorded, it's not registered or recorded for a statistical purpose. It's recorded just to control some part of society, of the way things work. It's a regulatory data. This data is then used and digitalized. It's already digitalized. We don't even, because in the past we had to, it was called digitization. We don't even have to do that. It's digitalized already. It's the way it's recorded. We're using computers. We don't have to transcribe anything, and it's being updated, controlled, checked, validated in order to produce statistical records. So we're moving forward, and it's being reflected not only in the goods, but also in the services.
Okay, thank you so much, Maria. And I would like to ask you some more about technology. How, according to you, do technological advancements, such as the introduction of new goods, reshape international trade frameworks and classifications? And what challenges or opportunities does this present for trade and development policies in case of cooperation of EU and ASEAN?
Well, the incorporation of new technologies, as I said, it allows us to rely on software, so we have more data readily available. It also allows us to share this data. We have several databases that everyone can use, and we have visualization tools. So it's the audience that can rely on these resources is more ample now. It doesn't have to be only researchers. That's one thing to it. Another thing, another fact, another topic or issue that is brought up with technological advances is the fact that products have changed. New products are available. We use to record trade, for instance, we use classifications. The harmonized system is one of them. The issue is that the oldest version of the harmonized system is from 1988. At that time, many of the products that we currently have didn't exist, many of the goods. So these classifications are persistently updated to make a way for these new products, to define them. And what this allows us is disaggregation. In order for the governments, ASEAN, the EU, the national governments to adopt national policies, identify opportunities, we need the data, because the governments, who are the policymakers, who are the ones that establish the frameworks, the legal frameworks, have to make have to enable the private sector with a more friendly business environment. They need the data to move ahead actually the governments, the local, like the policies related to the framework should move ahead. But in reality, in general, we are lagging. What we should strive for is to at least be in line with the business atmosphere, to know the trends of the products, to know the trends of the market, to know the frameworks that are needed. Currently, trade agreements are changing so much that we don't only have goods and services agreements. We also have digital only, so digital service only, digital goods only agreements. This is the new tendency in the future. It's happening already.
Okay, thank you so much, Maria, for sharing your knowledge, which will be very valuable in the later stages of our project. Thank you so much again. And now we are moving to Javier Gil Pérez, who is a professor at Universidad Pontificia Comillas in Madrid in Department of International Relations. He's a specialist in topics of ASEAN and international security, among others, thanks to several research stays in prestigious centers, such as the Center of Strategic and International Studies in Jakarta and the Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies in Singapore. Hello, Javier. Thank you for your participation.
Hello, good morning, everyone, and especially to Daju. Selamat sore, Daju.
Okay, thank you so much. And firstly, could you describe how has the relationship with the EU affected the state of security and in the ASEAN region?
Yes. Well, first, I would like to comment a couple of ideas. Very important to understand the connection between European Union and ASEAN in the area of security. The first idea is that the European Union is not a factor of instability in ASEAN. Okay, that is important. So European Union is not provoking or has not provoked and is not aggravating, some of the most important security issues in the region. So basically, if we now to basically describe the main source of insecurity in Southeast Asia, that you mentioned some of them, basically the vast majority of non-traditional security issues, the climate change, energy insecurity, several illegal traffickings, and of course terrorism, territorial disputes, and the brutal, civil war in Myanmar. So in all these problems, European Union basically is not aggravating, these problems. So that is interesting. So European Union, first idea, is not an element of instability. But the second point, I consider European Union has played in the past and is playing now a positive role in contributing, to the peace and stability of the region. But I would say I have to clarify that the role of the European Union is limited, okay? And it's limited because the European Union is an external actor to Southeast Asia, and because, and this is another issue that the European Union has to face in the following years, we are not, let's say, a military power. So that, both ideas are important just to introduce the topic. Being said that, European Union has contributed, to some of them, to let's say, to stabilize some important hotspots in the region. I have selected 4. The first one, European Union is a member of some of the most important mechanisms elaborated by ASEAN to promote peace and stability, especially the ASEAN Regional Forum. So that is great. European Union, is supporting the peaceful negotiation to resolve the key dispute in Asia, that is the South China Sea. So I think that is very important that, European Union is supporting negotiation, is supporting cooperation, is supporting conversation, and is supporting as a legal framework the United Nations, Convention of the Law of the Sea. I think that is critical for ASEAN, and it's critical for the EU. The European Union has played an important role, for example, basically as an economic partner, that you and Emilio mentioned. European Union is one of the most important trading partners of ASEAN. European Union is one of the most important investors in ASEAN. And for me, when you contribute to economic development, you contribute to the political stability of a region. Okay, so that is important. And here the European Union, I think, has played an important role. And in fact, European Union is one of the most important, donors of humanitarian and development aid. So I think that is very important to note. And finally, just to give you 2 examples of a positive very role of the European Union in Asia. European Union, for example, was the critical institution supporting the implementation of the peace process in Aceh, in 2005, when they deploy was basically observers just to seal and to complete, the peace process between the Gerakan Aceh Merdeka, one of the most important insurgent groups operating in Indonesia, and the government of Indonesia. So that role was critical. That role was highly welcomed by the European Union, and that role was highly welcomed, by the president of Indonesia in those times. And finally, and because this is connected to insecurity, the European Union has been a clear supporter of the peace process, for example, in Mindanao, in the south of the Philippines. So basically, my assessment is European Union has a positive role, but this is limited. We are an external actor, and basically we can do more.
Thank you so much, Javier. And now, how specifically the regions can support the fight against transnational threats such as cybercrime, terrorism, or organized crime? And what innovative solutions can the EU and ASEAN jointly develop to effectively counter these challenges?
Well, here we are in a period of transition. Now we are in the middle of a technological revolution, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, robotics, space exploration, and so on. So basically, the first dilemma that the European Union and ASEAN we have to resolve is how to integrate all these new cutting-edge technologies, to fight against, for example, cybercrime, to operate against, the cyber criminality online, how to integrate these technologies to combat terrorism, and so on. And here I think we have some advantages. I think that the European Union and ASEAN, we agree on the transnational, international source of all these, let's say, security issues. So basically, we agree that we cannot combat, nationally speaking, for example, transnational crime. So we have to cooperate. So European Union and ASEAN has to cooperate to stop, for example, the illegal trafficking of drugs, from Myanmar to the rest of the world. We have to cooperate, to stop, for example, illegal trafficking, of humans, from Southeast Asia to other countries. So that is a very good starting point. We share on the basics. But being said that, I think that we have to do more, and we have to, to think out of the box. I think, for example, in the area of terrorism, I think that we have to exchange more information with the European Union and ASEAN, especially, among the key countries. I would say Indonesia, the Philippines, Spain, France, because I think this exchange of information is limited, is not in real time. We need more trust. That you mentioned in the past, but one of the key elements in establishing good relationship between Asian countries or Southeast Asian countries and European countries is trust. So basically, we have to generate more trust, just, for example, to share intel. And that is very important, but we have to work on that. Second point is that, we have to learn, from Southeast Asia. Here in Europe, for example, in the case of Spain, we don't have programs to de-radicalize, terrorist prisoners. For example, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, they combat what I call the full cycle of terrorism. But here in Spain, my personal taste is that we need to do more. And probably we can learn from Indonesia how Indonesia is working with former, prisoners, convicted of terrorism, and how they have been reintegrated into society. So I think here there is a massive, space for cooperation. There are more things regarding, how to fight these security issues. I think the European Union is a good model for many things, but especially it's a good model for organizing, the borders. And I'm talking about the land borders and the maritime border. Here, I think the European Union and ASEAN, can work together, and especially the European Union has to offer, probably more cooperation on how to organize and how to manage, the land borders and maritime borders, especially speaking in a region where the piracy, or for example, many gangs are operating in the maritime domain. So basically, I think there are vast areas for cooperation, but now I think the dilemma is how to integrate, the new technologies in combating all these issues.
Thank you so much, Javier. And now, how do you think the EU and ASEAN can work together to modernize military technology, such as the drones, for example, to address security challenges in the Indo-Pacific region? And what specific initiatives can Indonesia and Spain take to support this process?
Well, again, we are facing a dilemma. We can create technology, for the best, or we can create technology for the worst. We can use uranium for generate electricity, or we can use uranium to enrich uranium and to create, an atomic bomb. But now the dilemma is very pressing. And regarding the drones, because I think the question is very specific. The drones, was basically have a problem, with legal issues and with moral issues. Now we are talking about, the growing industry of drones, semi-autonomous drones or autonomous drones. And the question is, I think that the European Union, ASEAN countries, and ASEAN, we must work together to establish the limits, for example, of the drone industry. And that is the first point. And the second point, regarding Spain and Indonesia, I think we have to look, basically at the past. During the 80s and during the 90s, Spain and Indonesia, we shared the industry of defense, especially Spain and Indonesia for more than 20 years. The Spanish company CASA and the Indonesian company PT Dirgantara, because they were working 20 years designing and producing airplanes in the factory of Bandung. So basically, we can replicate that model, So basically, if we want to do something, let's say, real, if we want to contribute, for example, to the new emerging industry of drones in Indonesia, and basically taking into account that Spain is becoming, I would say, a middle, power in this industry, where the possibility to integrate both industries and the possibility to transfer, technology is real. The example is in the past. For 20 years, we were, working together. So we can do the same now, in the following years. But basically, and again, I want to remark this, we have to establish a robust, legal framework, especially for the drones and for all the new technologies that are disrupting our lives.
Okay, thank you so much, Javier, for your answers and knowledge you've shared, which will be very useful for us. Now, Maria, Javier, do you have some comments to the answers of the second speaker? Would you like to add something, share your thoughts?
Sorry. Yes, I think that every integration process has different aspects. It has the aspect of security, of politics, of economics. They're all integrated, although many times we deal with them separately. But they are integrated, and if we want global value chains to continue, global value chains are the way that production and commerce is taking place. It's integrated, it's globalized. That's where we have been directed in the last 20, 30 years, although sometimes it seems like it's interrupted by politics, by positions like nationalistic governments positions, but this should be the direction that we should go, and trade agreements allow this. Security allows this, and it also integrates or mingles, intertwines with commerce, for instance. Cybersecurity is something that's very important, and we are trying to incorporate and share knowledge across regions to enable digital trade. Politics is also part of it. Sometimes we deal with all these aspects separately, but they're all integrated. We will not be able to have digital trade, which is related to global value chains and it's world integrated, if we cannot ensure that these global value chains are possible through politics and security.
Thank you. Javier, would you like to add something?
Yeah, basically, I think in this, all the speakers mentioned, but basically we are in a period of transition, to something new. I think there are two reasons. One is the geopolitical transition. We are entering into a kind of a new, I kind of, see the future design of a new multipolar world. So basically, it's forming now. In this new multipolar world, basically the European Union must, must take a very important role. But basically, I think we need to debate. We need an internal debate in European Union. What we want to be, in the coming future, and especially in the Indo-Pacific. That is the region that is emerging, is the region that is growing, and is the region that, for example, we find there the China and India, plus Southeast Asia, that has become, in my opinion, a third pole, of economic power, and I would say in the coming future of political power. So that is one idea. And the second idea is that in the case of Europe or European Union, in this new multipolar world that is under formation, we need to increase our military capabilities. I mentioned in the very beginning of my comment that Europe has a positive, let's say, role, in Southeast Asia, but it is a limited one. No? So we want to move from limited one to an active role. I think we have to do something more. We have to invest more on security and defense. We have to trust more on our own capabilities. We have to move forward. So I think that debate is far from over. Finally, after living in Indonesia for some years in the past, and after visiting the region, basically every year, I think we have a wonderful common ground. We have some common interests. We can work together. But there is a full of potential. We can mention tourism in the case of Spain and in the case of Spain and Indonesia. We can mention the public infrastructure. We can mention more on defense. So basically, there are a lot of things that we can do. But we have to work on, and we have to trust each other. That will be all.
Thank you, Javier. Emilio, would you like to say something? Emilio, your microphone is mute. Emilio, we can't hear you.
Yes. When I was listening to Javier, some ideas came to me. The first one, yes, there is a lot of potential for the cooperation between European Union and ASEAN. But if you have listened the confirmation speech by the new High Representative and the confirmation speech by President von der Leyen, what you see and what I expect in the immediate future is a European Union much more focused in Russia, in our close neighborhood. Yeah. China will still be something important. European Union will be focusing on, and then the new world of transatlantic relations that it will be coming with Trump. So I think we will need to make an effort for European Union to keep attention to Southeast, to the Indo-Pacific in general, and I think there it's to the Asian countries who should take the initiative of attracting European Union and showing European Union why it should not forget, it should not abandon the Indo-Pacific, but on the opposite, for the present problems of European Union, focusing in the Indo-Pacific, at the end of the day, it's a winning proposition.
Thank you so much, Emilio. Maria, you would like to say something?
Yes, Elisa. Yeah, following on the thought of Emilio, I agree that the importance of politics and economics alternate according to the context. So now, as Emilio said, maybe the focus could shift temporarily towards some regional partners, and then the focus could go back to Asia Pacific. I think that the EU understands very well the way to integrate with the region. Why do I say this? Because as we said in the past, the focus was signing regional agreements. So region to region, that would be the EU versus ASEAN. When they realized more than a decade ago that this was the process became very cumbersome, they decided to go forward, but with bilateral agreements. and not only with ASEAN countries, currently with Vietnam and Singapore, but also with other Asian countries. So I think when, for instance, currently an investment agreement has already been signed with China. There is an agreement, a negotiation, an FTA being negotiated with India. ASEAN already has agreement with Japan, Korea, India, China, major trading partners, not only of Asia, but of the world. Countries like India that are very important players in the service sector. So one of the most important players in trade services in the world. So considering that the EU is going forward with these negotiations, makes me think that they have a plan to integrate not only with ASEAN, and they understand how ASEAN is integrated with Asia, and how global value chains operate for goods and for services. Services are nowadays, in the past, services was a topic that was not deal with because we didn't have databases. Now we know, because we have these databases, that goods and services are completely linked. Digital trade, they are goods and services, ICT goods and ICT services are the enablers of digital trade. We don't have digital trade if we don't have these goods. And we are exporters of services, so which means that the EU has a surplus in services. So it's important to focus on the services that we're trading. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. Javier, Miguel, you would like to add something?
Oh, it's okay.
Okay, thank you so much. So we are coming to the end of our webinar. Many thanks again to Vicente Palacio, Dayo Nirma Amruanti, Emilio de Miguel Calabria, Maria Bernarda Bordermero, and Javier Gil Perez for participating in this amazing discussion. It was a pleasure to be here with you. And many thanks to all people who watched us via YouTube. Thank you, and don't forget to follow Fundación Alternativas to keep up to date with the next events. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.